So that's the season. Finished. And we've all had, a couple of days now to sit with it. And before we argue about the finale, I want to talk about him. Because there's something about Daemon that we all noticed, and then I think we stopped noticing it.
Perhaps you might place a feather pillow over his head and speed along your inheritance.
Are we?
Then you're of no use to me.
Announce the false King Aegon as a usurper. Bend the knee to me.
I came here to raise swords, not corpses.
Have you noticed that Daemon in this show just does whatever he wants? Whatever he wants, whenever the mood takes him to, whoever happens to be standing closest. That's the whole brand. That's why we love him. But honestly, I don't think that's what we've been watching. I think we've been watching the least free man in Westeros for 3 straight seasons, and the show told us so in the very first episode. So let's start where he starts, with a crown. Okay, the Stepstones. So he goes and fights this war nobody asked him to fight, against an enemy the capital couldn't care less about, and he wins it. He puts a crown on his own head and calls himself King of the Narrow Sea. And look, that is about as close to self-made as this world allows. No council voted on it, and no father blessed it. He just took a rock in the sea and turned the thing into a title. And then, with the paint on that brand new crown barely dry, with a fresh war wound still on him and a legend already forming around his name, he flies home. He lands in front of his brother. And he kneels. He takes the crown off his own head and hands it over. Think about that. The man who crowned himself gave the crown away within days of making it. And he did it in a room full of people, in front of the one man whose opinion he keeps insisting he doesn't need. So here's the question I keep coming back to. If you genuinely make your own values, why does Big Brother need to be in the room when you do it? Or rather, why do you need anybody in the room at all? That coronation wasn't, let me say it properly, that wasn't an act of freedom. It was a message. And a message needs a reader. Everybody watching that scene reads it as swagger. I read it as a man who built something impressive for the sole purpose of putting it at someone's feet. And once you start looking at him that way, the whole character changes shape. So here's the claim, and it's going to annoy people. Daemon Targaryen looks like the freest man in this story. He is the least free man in it, not because he's trapped by law or duty, because everything he does is addressed to one person who never once said the thing he needed to hear. Now, there's a reason the Nietzsche comparison follows this guy around, On the surface, it fits him better than almost anyone in fiction. Quick version, no philosophy degree required. I promise. Nietzsche had this idea of the Übermensch, the overman, somebody who finally stops asking permission. The old rules came from somewhere, right? Gods, fathers, custom, the crowd. The overman notices that those rules are just old habits with good branding, and he writes his own instead. There are 3 pieces to it. Self-overcoming, which means you treat yourself as the opponent. Value creation, which means you write the rules rather than break them. And amor fati, love of your fate. You take your life exactly as it happened, and you want it that way. Okay, now just line Daemon up against that list. Self-overcoming, he's the best sword in the realm, and he got there by work. Value creation, the man does not recognize a single institution. Small council, faith, marriage, succession law. Ignored. All of it. Amor fati, he walks into fights he might lose, and he laughs on the way in. He even talks the part. He tells his brother the hand is a threat, and gets called a liar. He tells the court it's rotten and gets called a traitor. In a story where everyone is lying about their intentions, he's rude and direct. And that reads as freedom. So yeah, on the outside, he passes the test. And the show dresses him for the part too, by the way. Everyone else at court wears their house like a uniform. He turns up dressed as he pleases, says whatever crosses his mind, leaves the moment a room bores him. Even his silences are insubordinate. Directors keep shooting him from below, like the camera itself agrees he's above all this. The entire audio-visual language of the series is in on the sales pitch. And I want to be fair to this reading, because it isn't shallow. He's the only person in the first season who says out loud that the succession is going to end in blood. He says it years early, straight to people who could have him killed for it. He's the only one who treats the small council as what it actually is, a room of frightened men managing a dying king. Everyone else in that castle is performing loyalty. He performs nothing. That reads as honesty, and honesty reads as freedom. And it's not just talk either. Take the City Watch, which is the one job his brother actually let him keep for a while. He inherits a rabble of unpaid men in rusted half-armor. Inside of a season, they're 2,000 gold cloaks who would follow him through a wall. He armed those men, paid them, and handed out permission to be feared. Was the cleanup of the city brutal? It was a massacre with paperwork. But notice the pattern, because it repeats every single time. Hand this man any institution, any group of forgotten men, any half-dead cause, and he will make it sharp, loyal, and dangerous inside a year. He's genuinely brilliant at building things. He just can't build them for himself, only as exhibits. Look what I made you. Look what you could have had. He's also the only major character who repeatedly does the hard thing himself. He doesn't send someone to the Stepstones. He goes. He doesn't hire a champion. He fights. In a story that runs on other men's sons dying for somebody else's claims, a man who shows up in person looks like a man who owns his own life. So when we look at him and see the freest character in Westeros, that's not a stupid reading. I just think it's the reading the show wants us to have for about 2 seasons, so that it can take it apart in the 3rd. Because here's the catch. Nietzsche wrote about the inside. There is a second idea in the same books, and it's the one nobody puts on a t-shirt. Ressentiment. It's French, I assume, because, well, Nietzsche wanted the extra contempt. It means, roughly, a life organized around a wound. A man built on resentment doesn't create values. They react. Their whole moral world is built out of what somebody did to them, and everything they do afterwards is a reply to it. From the outside, it can look like strength. Inside, it's an argument with one person that never ends. Keep that definition in your pocket. Now watch the bedroom scene again. The one right after the funeral, first episode, when everything between these brothers finally gets said out loud. I mean, listen to that. That's a list. He's been keeping an actual list.
You've thrown back in my face!
You've only ever tried to send me away to the Vale, to the City Watch, anywhere but by your side.
To the Vale, to the City Watch, anywhere but by your side. Every posting filed away as an insult, going back years. And then comes the line that I honestly think is the entire character in one breath.
10 years you've been king, and yet not once have you asked me to be your hand.
This is the man who supposedly doesn't need permission. And here he is, counting the years his brother didn't invite him. 10 years. He kept count. And, well, you don't keep count of stuff you're free from.
Your hand.
Why would I do that?
Because I'm your brother.
Because I'm your brother. That's the entire argument, and notice what it isn't. It isn't because I'm capable, though he is. It isn't because I've earned it, and you could argue he has. Because I'm your brother, he isn't asking for a job. He's asking for a place. And when Viserys doesn't hand it over, watch what Daemon reaches for
A
next.
second son who stands to inherit nothing he doesn't seize for himself.
He's describing Otto. He thinks he's describing Otto. He's looking at the man who took the seat next to the king, the place that in his head belongs to him, and the insult he chooses is a photograph of himself. A second son who inherits nothing he doesn't seize. I mean, come on, he said that himself, not me.
He doesn't protect you. I would.
From what?
Yourself.
Nobody asked, by the way. Like nobody in that room requested protection. That's the resentment shape again. He needs to be needed, and when he isn't, he'll invent the danger.
You're weak, Viserys. And that Council of Leeches knows it.
Himself. And when none of it lands, the wound talks. You're weak. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say I'm strong. He can't build himself up without tearing Viserys down, because his whole self is measured against his brother. That's not a value creator. That's a reply that has been running for 20 straight years. And the show knows exactly what it's doing here, because it hands Otto, of all people, the cleanest read of Daemon anyone ever delivers.
Not for the throne. He lacks the patience for it.
The gods have yet to make a man who lacks the patience for absolute power.
Everyone in that castle can see it. The freest man in Westeros is on a leash, and the leash is held by the one person who never says the words he's waiting for. Which brings us to Harrenhal. And okay, look, Season 2 gets called slow. The Harrenhal stretch gets called filler. I get it. I do. But if you buy the reading we're building here, Harrenhal isn't filler. It's the MRI. He arrives at the biggest ruin in Westeros to raise an army. He walks in like he owns the place, and the castle immediately starts taking him
If
apart.
you've not yet surmised, you are welcome here.
Before anything else, listen to his recruitment pitch. This is how the freest man in Westeros asks for help.
Perhaps the presence of the crown and a dragon will sharpen minds round these parts.
The crown and a dragon. That's not diplomacy. That's a man who owns exactly one tool, and it's fear. He honestly cannot imagine why anyone would need a second one. Which is going to matter, because the Riverlords are about to teach him that fear stops working the moment people notice you need them more than the other way around. Then, the plan itself, and listen to how he says it.
We march on King's Landing and take the throne.
The throne.
Take the throne. Not hold the Riverlands for the Queen. Not raise the banners for Rhaenyra. Take the throne. The old man catches it instantly. The throne? Even Simon Strong can hear which war Daemon is actually fighting. And then, out loud, to a room full of witnesses, it slips all the way out.
I can renounce the false King Aegon as a usurper. Bend the knee to me.
To me, there it is. 20 years of not being chosen, and the first moment he's out of everyone's sight, the claim just slides off her and onto him. I honestly don't think he even decided to do it. It's just where the sentence goes when nobody's watching him. And when fear doesn't move the rivermen fast enough, listen to where his head goes.
There are others who would sit idle and wait for their claims to be brought to them. That is not my way.
Splitting fire would justify what's followed you here.
Let it not be said that Daemon Targaryen failed to...
He can't even recruit soldiers without it turning into a comparison with the people who were handed what he had to seize. Every speech this man gives has a second addressee, and that listener is never in the room.
All men may be led, Sir Simon. Even rivermen.
He says that like a man laying out a philosophy, and the castle spends the next 4 episodes demonstrating, patiently, that the sentence is true, and that it applies to him personally. Somebody has been leaving him his whole life. He just never checked who. And then the dreams start. Here's why the dreams matter. The castle doesn't show him monsters.
You were always the strong one. The finest swordsman.
It shows him his own file. His dead mother, telling him he was always the strong one. That's not a nightmare. That's the compliment he's been chasing his entire life, served to him by a ghost, because nobody living ever said it. Harrenhal found the hole in him on the first try.
Did you say it?
You can't possibly still be angry about this.
And Viserys, dead, reduced to a hallucination conjured out of damp stone and guilt, and still, even in this form, not giving him the one thing. You can't possibly still be angry. He can. He's built out of still being angry. That's the Ubermensch test. This man spent 2 decades performing self-sufficiency, and one damp ruin with a few bad nights got the truth out of him. And there's one dream I want to pull out separately, because it's the nastiest one. It isn't even about him. It's a voice asking,
It's a pity, don't you think, that you never knew your mother?
He lost her before he was old enough to remember her, so the first person who was supposed to choose him never really got the chance. You want a one-line origin story for a man who spends 50 years auditioning for approval. There it is. Harrenhal didn't invent his wound.
What are you playing at, old man?
I do wonder, Your Grace, if you're getting enough sleep. This old place is...
It just knew where the archive was kept. And notice how he responds to all of it. What are you playing at? He genuinely cannot tell whether the old steward is mocking him, because for the first time in his life, he's in a room where he can't read the power.
You will die in this place.
It rattles him more than any battle ever has. And Alice just reads him like weather. Everyone reads him. That's the humiliating part. The most dangerous man in the story,
A friend by day and a foe by night.
and everyone he meets at Harrenhal handles him like a known quantity. A friend by day and a foe by night. That's a servant, describing a king's consort to his face. You don't talk like that to a free man. You talk like that to a man whose strings you can see. Now, if I'm going to call the man unfree for an entire video, I owe you the strongest scene against my own case. It exists. It's in the Season 2 finale, and I kind of love it. The Riverlords won't follow him, and the boy, Oscar Tully,
You are here, which is the important thing.
You were quick enough to dismiss me before.
You're of no significance to me then. Now,
stands up in front of the entire Riverlands and says what nobody else dared to. Remember, this is a boy Daemon waved off as useless not long before. Then the boy shows up with the one thing Daemon needs.
And I have no love for Daemon Targaryen. He has dishonored himself and the crown with his comportment here.
An army. And suddenly the dismissals are on the other side of the table.
I may have been a touch enthusiastic in pursuing my aims.
And then the boy names his price. Not an apology. Justice for what Daemon let the Blackwoods do to their neighbors. And Daemon pays it. He admits fault out loud in front of every lord he needs, and then hands over Willem Blackwood, the one man who actually followed him. And days later, when Rhaenyra lands at Harrenhal, he goes down on one knee in front of the whole army. He stays down. By all appearances, he means it. The real kind. The proud man finally putting the mission above the wound. I would love to give him that. Here's why I can't. Watch what unlocks the knee. It isn't philosophy. It's the vision at the Weirwood where the show finally hands him the one prize he's been starving for. A place in the story. You matter. You have a part to play. That's what bends the knee. Not freedom from the need. A bigger authority finally feeding it. He didn't stop asking for permission. He found someone grander than Viserys to ask. The wound didn't close. It got promoted, upgraded from a dead brother who never asked to a prophecy that finally did. And that brings us to this season. Because in Season 3, the show stops hinting and starts saying it in dialogue, through the last person you'd expect. A drunk. There's a scene in a tavern in the finale. Ulf, at this point a dragon rider and a professional embarrassment, is holding court about the royal family. And he gets to Daemon, and what he says, in a room full of servants, about the most feared man on the continent, is that his wife keeps him on a short lead, like a bitch in a kennel. His words, not mine. And nobody in that tavern argues with him. Nobody laughs it off. They pour him another drink. Because by Season 3, the man's unfreedom is common knowledge. It's bar talk. And here's the uncomfortable part. The drunk is right. Watch what Daemon actually does this season. A Hightower envoy rides into his camp, and Daemon wants to hurt him. You can see it. This is a man who choked a diplomat not so long ago, and he doesn't. He lets him go, under the banner of peace, correct and courteous. Why? Because his wife told him not to make a monster out of her. That's the reason. He's holding a promise from a bedroom out in a field in front of witnesses. And I want you to notice who delivers this diagnosis, because I think it's deliberate. Not a maester, not an enemy commander with a map, a drunk in a tavern, a man this show treats as a walking punchline, and even he can see it from across the city. When the writers want to tell you something is now obvious, they don't give the line to the smartest person in the room. They give it to the dumbest one, and they let it land. That's what this is. The claim we're arguing about in this whole video, the case I've been carefully building, is being said out loud in a bar by a man who can barely stand. The show is done being subtle about him. Its last call in that tavern, the whole city is 3 drinks deep, and everybody, including the man asleep on the table, knows exactly what Daemon Targaryen is. The man who answered to nobody now behaves because somebody asked him to. And I want to be careful here, because that can look like the same thing as growth. It isn't the same thing. He didn't decide cruelty was beneath him. He was told, and he obeyed, because the one doing the telling is the person whose approval currently keeps him upright. The address on the envelope changed. The envelope didn't. And we know it isn't a conviction, because of how fast it expires. At the gates of Tumbleton, there are children standing on the walls. A human shield, put there, specifically because of that promise. It works for exactly as long as the promise holds. Then, a gate needs opening, and the promise turns out to weigh about as much as one breath. A conviction breaks slowly, with a fight. A performance just stops when the audience looks away. You saw which one this was. And bracket that broken promise with the speech he gives right before the battle, because the 2 scenes are having an argument with each other. He lines up his army, looks at these lords and knights and cutthroats, and announces, out loud, that he doesn't want their best. He wants the worst. Grant no mercy, give no quarter. Now, that's a hell of a thing to say with your wife's words still hanging over you. She asked him not to make a monster out of her, and his answer, in front of a few thousand witnesses, is to order the monster wholesale. But here's what I find genuinely sad about that speech. And I mean sad, not shocking. It isn't defiance. He isn't breaking free of her leash. He's performing off it the way a dog runs in circles the moment the gate opens. The one time in 3 seasons, somebody actually held him, gently, with nothing but a request. He couldn't stand it. Freedom, for this man, has never meant choosing his own path. It means nobody being close enough to ask him for anything. Those are very different conditions, and only one of them is freedom. The other one is just distance. One more thing this season did, and I think it's the quiet cruelty of the whole arc. It built him a mirror, and then it sent the reflection straight at him. Daemon and Aemond. I mean, say it out loud. A pair of second sons. 2 men who grew up next to a throne that was never going to be theirs. 2 men with famous older siblings, a talent for violence, and nowhere sanctioned to put it. The Rogue Prince is a role, and it only fits one man at a time, and Aemond has been wearing it all season. Everything young Daemon used to be, Aemond is now, minus the charm, plus the bookkeeping. When they finally meet over the God's Eye, it isn't subtle, and I don't think it's trying to be. It's 2 men who spent their lives waiting to be chosen, colliding because neither of them can stand looking at the other. You don't hate a stranger that much. You hate a mirror that much. And think about what that mirror costs him, because the show never says it out loud. Think of every insult Daemon ever threw at Otto Hightower. The grasping second son, the man who feeds on a king's weakness, who takes what he cannot inherit. This season, that entire list walks around wearing an eye patch and Daemon's old haircut. When Daemon looks at Aemond and feels that very specific disgust, hotter than anything he has for actual enemies, he's not doing politics. He's reading his own file again, the way Harrenhal made him read it. Except this time the file has a dragon, a grudge, and a flight plan. If you've read the book, you know how this particular meeting ends, and I'm not going to spoil the shape of it here. What matters for our case is what the collision confirms. He never fought for the realm, and not really for the queen either. Maybe not even for himself. Every war he ever picked was a message home, and the last person left who can receive that message is a younger copy of the sender. So, does Daemon do whatever he wants? Sure, whatever he wants, except the one thing he truly craves, which was never his to take. To be asked, to be picked, by his brother, by the council, by the story itself. You can conquer the Stepstones twice over, and you still cannot make another man say, "I choose you," and a man organized around that sentence is not free. It doesn't matter how good he is with a sword. It doesn't matter how many rooms he can silence by walking into them. He's the most watchable man in the show, and he spent 3 seasons doing tricks for an audience of 1. Then the audience died. So he went looking for a new one. That surge took him through a haunted castle, a witch's bed, and a teenager's ultimatum. Because here's what 3 seasons of this character actually add up to, if you lay them end to end. A boy loses his mother before he can know her. He grows up beside a brother the world hands everything to. Out of nothing but the need to be looked at by that brother, he builds an army, a crown, and a legend. Then he loses him, and the whole unpayable debt gets transferred onto a ghost, a witch, a prophecy, and a wife. And if the book holds, he dies without one single person ever having said the sentence he built his life around. That's not a villain, and it's not a hero. That's the loneliest arc this franchise has ever written, and it's hiding inside its most entertaining character. The freest thing he ever did was kneel. Sit with that one for a minute. Anyway, that's my case. Now argue with me, because I know half of you think the knee was growth, and I've just called it a relapse. Tell me in the comments which one it was. And tell me what I missed, because there's always something, and you people never miss it. If this earned it, the like button genuinely helps us reach people who care about the show the way we do. I'll see you when the next one drops.